It's time for another edition of Live from Studio M on 105.5 Triple M. I'm your host, Jonathan Sutton. A bump in the road. We've all experienced it, whether it was in a relationship or maybe at work. We get off track, and sometimes it can be difficult to get back on the right path. Now, today's guest in Studio M, you'd never expect for her to get off track. She's made more than half a dozen albums. She's written for and with some of the greats in the music business, including Bonnie Raitt, Cher, Carole King, the Dixie Chicks, Art Garfunkel. But even someone who's so good at writing can sometimes get in a little bit of a rut. Thankfully, she found her way out. We'll talk to her about getting back in the groove, what she has in common with Lisa Simpson, and what it's like to hang out in a castle. But first, let's hear a song from Maia Sharp, live from Studio M.
Baby, what you drinking? 'Cause I've been thinking about you and wondering when you'd be home. I've been a little lonely, and I know you're the only one who can make it right tonight. I've been waiting 1,000 days to show you how I feel in 1,000 ways. The temperature's rising. Take off your coat. Don't stop till there's nothing but the radio on. Nothing but the radio on. Let's see where it takes us. Careful or reckless, I like the second one. Well, how about you? What's hiding under? I don't ever wanna wonder, oh, what we could have done that we could just do. I've been waiting 1,000 years to fall into your eyes and disappear. The temperature's high. Take off your shirt. Don't stop till there's nothing but the radio on. 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 Oh, 'cause I've been waiting for you to walk through that door and prove that less is more. So much more with nothing but the radio on. Nothing but the radio on. Nothing but the radio on. Nothing but the radio on.
We'll chat with her next here at 105.5 Triple M. Magically insert a commercial.
Amazing.
We're back live from Studio M with Maia Sharp here at 105.5 Triple M. And first of all, thank you for that song that, because we're from the same generation, that you didn't do nothing but like Pandora on.
Oh God, no.
Nothing but, the iPod going.
Exactly. Yes,
So
hopefully it will remind folks that there's also this really awesome thing just called a radio.
Yes, exactly. So in writing this album, really, I did read a little bit that there were some struggles for you, I guess, with writing, which seems hard for me to believe. I feel like you're one of these who just like is cranking it out all the time. But you kind of did hit a black hole, if you will.
Yeah, it wasn't really a slump. It felt like a shrug. Like, ugh, all these things that I'm writing, I don't care enough about them to to finish them. Or then if I did finish them, I was like, what's new about that? I mean, if you're going to put stuff into the world, and it might actually speak a little bit to what you just said. There's so much music out there. There's so many things. Do I really want to add to it unless I love it, unless I feel like there's something important about it, even if it's just from, important to me, which usually if I have a connection to it, that's when someone else will. And if I don't have a connection to it, when it was just like an exercise, it was an idea that I saw through, but I don't feel it, others might not feel it either, probably won't. So I just really had to dig a little deeper and kind of find a new voice on this one. And it took a while. It took about a year, really, but I think I did. And it's like a broader kind of life experience voice. It's not just writing little story after little story, but it's more about this might be how the universal feels.
So, what was the trick? Why?
I just had to write myself out of it. I just had to suck for a little while, and it's okay. As long as you guys don't hear that stuff. I used it as a step.
Right, yeah. So I'm always curious with artists when they're creating stuff. Sometimes you write something and you go to bed and like, this is amazing. And then you wake up and you're like, this is the suck pot.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you have to be able, I think it's really about allowing yourself whatever that process has to be. Nobody has ever asked me how long it took me to write the song that they love. So if it took me a week, if I had to leave it and I had to come back and it sucked, but there was that one good line and then I just played off the one good line, it took another week, who cares? If the final result is something that might be valuable, even if it's just to one other person, that to me is a valuable thing.
Absolutely. Okay, well let's hear another song then. It better not suck.
It better not, God, after that.
It's Maia Sharp, live from Studio. What are you gonna do?
Well, we thought we might actually reach back to the last album for a tune. This was a single of my last album. This is called Me After You. Except, just as a special treat, I'm going to do it in the correct key. This is a little extra bonus. Broken on the floor, I counted up the scars and thought I'd won the war. Said I tried everything to save us, but I didn't try. The other day I heard you were in Italy somewhere. I remember you told me you always wanted to go there, but I never did want to learn the language. Did I? This moment, but clearly anyone would rather be you after me, and me after you. What's it like to be happy, to have your heart
Simpson analogy.
Oh, that's
just
so
because
funny.
you played
Yeah.
saxophone as a kid.
Yes.
Yeah. So did you? Your dad, a great songwriter as well, Randy. And so when you grew up, like, was your destiny kind of, or like, what was it like growing up? If you could kind of describe a little bit in the household, what was going on there?
Oh, I was extremely, extremely fortunate that there was just music and support in the house the whole time. I mean, they couldn't really tell me once I showed an interest in doing something in this business, like whether it was going to be, a saxophone player. I actually started on oboe. And I was in the Junior Philharmonic for oboe. But then they made you wear a dress, and I was like, yeah, no, I think I'm going to play saxophone now. So I moved on to sax. And then...
so your dad didn't say, like, guitar is pretty cool. Like that.
They never pushed me anywhere. They saw where I was headed, and then they supported it. So fortunate, because I have a lot of friends that didn't have that same experience. So yeah, about halfway through college, I was in school for saxophone, performance of theory, and all of that stuff.
So you went far. This wasn't like a fourth grade thing.
No, in fact, I have my saxophone with me now. We've been playing it live at the shows, and it's just because it's so important to me. I can never leave it in the car. so it's just kind of here, just for the safety of it. But yeah, whenever I showed, interest in something, writing or an instrument, piano or guitar or whatever, they were both there to support it and to help in any way that they could. My dad, he showed me how to run a studio. Like he went from 4-track to 8-track to 16 up to 24, into Pro Tools and all that. And every step of the way, I would get the thing that he had just moved on from.
Nice.
So I'd get the 4-track when he had the 8, and I'd get the 8 when he could. And so he'd show me all that stuff. So lucky.
But did he say, this is how you write a song? He did?
No, we wrote together, and I just saw, things that I wanted to do and things that I wanted to avoid. And so much of it comes, too, from listening, whoever are your favorite songwriters. Like, I listen to a lot of Paul Simon, a lot of Joni Mitchell, a lot of Ricky Lee Jones, and you just kind of sense where they're going, how they're trying to tell their story, and you try to do that. Like, would Paul ever say this? No, scratch.
Did cool people come by the house though? Sometimes that were.
Oh yeah.
But that was like no big deal, or.
Well, he was always in a band, or he was producing somebody. Oh, let me see. Delaney Bramlett was over a lot. He's a badass. Sorry, if you have to pay for that. Yeah, there were just.
But it wasn't like all night. I'm just picturing this like all night music sessions at your house, people jamming in the basement and all. Not really.
It wasn't so much like that. They
Lie
were.
to me.
Okay. Yeah, well, Hendrix was actually, that wouldn't have worked out. I don't think I was around yet, but there were always very musical, kind of alternative, anti-establishment people around, but also in a responsible environment. Like people could assume that my folks, because they've had kind of a hippie vibe about them, and they were barely 20 when they had me, and they were musicians. Like, there wasn't like pot and party and all that. That wasn't happening. So they had like a responsible version of this crazy life, which is that's kind of a tightrope. Like I don't know very many people that can live that, but they managed.
Yeah. Okay. We'll get to some more music in a second. We're talking to Maia Sharp, but I do want to ask you a little bit about working with Miles Copeland. And so he, Stuart Copeland's brother, great record guy, and I've heard these stories about this awesome castle that he has, and that you're making a face like.
No, I'm nodding. It is awesome. It's totally crazy.
Well, and he invites people to come like for music camp, right? But and you have gone many times, right?
Yeah, I wrote for Miles. My kind of entry into all of this was I wrote for him and I signed to him, so I was an artist and a writer for him at the same time, and he managed Sting and the Police, and I guess the story that I've heard is that he was driving through France with his wife to go see Sting at his castle, and his wife was like, we should get a castle. And so then they had a castle because she was really hot.
Yeah,
I guess that's
amazing.
How that happened.
That's how it happens for everybody, right? But so this castle really is like.
It really is. It's beautiful. It's like from the 1200s, and just this beautiful spread. I think there was something like 30 rooms in it. And he...
Heating it's probably a bitch, right?
I'm sorry?
Heating it is
Oh,
probably
I
a
can't
pain,
even
right?
imagine
Yeah.
what it costs, and
Yeah.
just mowing the lawn and just taking care of everything. I went 8 times, but I think they did it maybe 20 times. He invited 24 writers who would write in groups of 3 for anywhere from like 7 days to 9, and we would write a new song every day in a new group of 3. And as the castles went on, they added more and more services. Like the first time I went, there was only one kind of acoustic style studio where you kind of only had an hour just to get the idea down. And by the time, by like my 8th trip, there were 3 studios and they were full bore. You could make an album in there.
In this castle?
Yes,
Wow.
in the castle. With a dedicated engineer in each one, and players even, like people that were rolling around that weren't writers. They were just going to be the drummer on your session. They were just going to be the guitar player on your session. Wow. And make your session really, really good. The song that you just wrote that day with 2 people that you probably just met. So the pressure of it, the intimidation factor, you can't think about what you're doing before you fly there because you'll just go fetal in the corner. Like, how am I ever going to just meet 2 people, write a whole song, and then record that whole song that night? And one of those people might be Carole King. Like, I can't even, that doesn't work.
Yeah.
But then when you get there, the environment is such a nurturing one. There's people, you don't have to do any of your everyday life stuff. You don't have to walk the dog or make the bed or do anything. All you have to do is roll out, have food that they made you,
Right.
go write a song, go record that song. You have more energy than you've ever had because you're in this crazy fantasy land. The only trouble is then, you go home and you have to walk the dog and make your bed.
Did you write with Carole King in
I
that
did.
situation?
Yeah. I ended up writing with her like 3 times along the way. That was another advantage to being one of Miles's writers, is that he would plant me in the sessions that he wanted a little slice of. So I got to be in some pretty
So
cool
you met her
rooms.
before meeting her in a castle in France?
No, I met her
There,
on
right
that day.
that
Yeah.
day.
Hi,
Yeah.
I'm Maya. We're going to write a song today and you're Carol. Yeah, I probably said something that stupid.
That's amazing. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, let's hear another song. I feel like I wouldn't be able to do it. Like, talk about writer's block.
Well, you feel like you can, but then you get in it, and there's a magic about being in that environment. If you think about it too much before, I was a mess before my first one. I had to call a friend. It was like a reach out hotline kind of thing.
Yeah.
I had to call a friend who had already done it once, and he's like, no, I know. It sounds like it's not going to work, but trust me, it's going to work. You're going to be okay. Like, okay. He kind of had to talk me off the ledge. But then once you do it one time, then you know that you can. Yeah.
Was the decorating? I'm sorry, I'm obsessing on castle. Was the decorating inside like a castle?
Oh,
or,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
He
no.
decorated it that way?
Yes. Miles loved that he owned a castle from the 12, maybe even 1100s, and he loved that. And there were suits of armor that would scare the hell out of you.
Wow.
And all the tapestries, the furniture looked old. I can't imagine that it was actually old, but it looked like it was from there. Yeah.
Wow.
It
Be
was
that rich to get
amazing.
super old furniture. That's amazing. Okay, it's Maia Sharp. What do you got for us now?
Oh, what do we got for? Let's do. Actually, do you mind switching to acoustic? We're gonna do.
And we'll
a song.
talk to Linda after too. We're not going to ignore
Okay,
you
good.
completely, Linda.
I probably don't have a better castle.
You don't have a better
No.
castle story now.
I get to play my G's and C's because of Linda Taylor doing all the hard stuff on. We're gonna do one from the new record. This one is it's an example of that kind of broader view of just from the looking through the lenses of life in general. This one's called "You're Alive." Living high in an ivory town, breaking hearts by the hour. Ain't it strange how the view has changed from the ground? She came along and climbed your wall, sold your wings and watched you fall along. Long way down. On the day you find something you're dying for, make a toast to Mona Lisa or the Holy Ghost. You're alive, you're alive, you're alive. You're alive. Can you find something you're dying for? Hey, congratulations, you're alive. You're alive. When you only stop crying and cry some more, it's okay. Congratulations, you're alive. You're alive.
Maia Sharp, live from Studio M. So you and Linda have been writing together for a while?
We actually, we've only written a couple of things together. We've been playing together and recording together and now producing together for a while, yeah.
Okay, so Linda, you've been in like some TV house bands, right? Like, okay, so whose line is it anyway? Is one, right?
That's right.
So here or there in England or where? Here?
On ABC first, about 12 years ago, we ran for 5 years. Went off the air. They never took it off the air. We just stopped filming, and now we're back on the CW network.
Okay.
And we've been doing that for about 5 seasons, but we did do sort of a live version of it in London this summer.
Okay, so is it, and then also for Roseanne, you were on like Roseanne show?
Roseanne it lasted about a minute.
Yeah.
She had a talk show. It was very, very brief, and we played I Am Woman behind Sandra Bernhard. You're just gonna have to go with it.
Are those gigs awesome, or does it get kind of wearing? Just because I always think of like the Saturday Night Live guys, and like I see those guys back there, and like during the monologue you see them, and they're like, is that a great gig, or is it?
Yes, for a musician, absolutely. For an independent musician, that's gonna be wonderful. Especially like you're saying, like the Saturday Night Live, they work 3 hours a day, if that, and it's. The 3 hours you're there, of course, it's huge, intense pressure, but they're still available to work with any artist they choose or do their sessions during the day. So with the security that a musician will never have of having a regular paycheck. So,
Right.
absolutely.
Okay. So I know your dad, I feel like I saw your dad wrote a kid's album not that long ago.
Yes, he has a new album out. Yeah.
So have you ever thought of dabbling in that kind of stuff, or?
Honestly, no, I haven't. His album is great. It's called Calling All the Elephants.
Yeah, I'm more interested in this
really
now because I have little ones, so I'm like,
oh yeah, it's a great album, and it's like it's one of those. It's written right on the line where the kids are going to enjoy it, they're going to want to sing along to it, but the adults are going to get stuff that the kids probably shouldn't yet, but they wouldn't yet. It's just right. It's like right on the. It's kind of like a Simpsons thing. It's like ooh, the cartoons, but the adults are like, oh, I know what's really going on.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, it's like that.
So, but that kind of stuff is not really.
It hasn't really been on the radar yet. No. Maybe because he had a little kid and I didn't. I don't know. I mean, I love him, but they're somebody else's, and that's even better.
Right. You could say goodbye to them.
Yes, love you.
Okay. We do have time for one more song. What would you like to do for us?
This is not a kid-friendly song. It's funny that we would segue into this one.
Yeah.
This is about getting hammered on an airplane.
Okay. Is this first-person situation, or?
It's written.
Absolutely not.
No, I don't know what you're talking about.
Right.
It's written in the first person, yeah, and it's.
Where were you going?
There's a little story around it. Oh, so many places has this happened. No, we wrote a little story around it to kind of justify what's happening, but really, I think when you're on a plane, you're entitled to have a couple of little bottles because you're on the plane and you had to deal with getting on the plane and the stranger next to you wearing sandals and there's so many things that are just totally out of your control. You've never met the guy that's driving it. I mean, that's kind of scary. That scares me, and I usually have to have a little bottle.
To ease the flight.
Just to make the flight fun. Yeah.
Have you been asked to leave a flight?
No, I've never gone that. Come on. No, I've never gone that far. It's just for myself to help it out a little bit. So this one's called Little
Screw Up
Bottles.
United. What's it called?
Sorry. Little Bottles.
Little Bottles, Maia Sharp, live from Studio M.
One of us had to be. So goodbye to you, goodbye to love. I'm anywhere but here bound, and it's wheels up on bad luck, starting over when I touch down. And now my love is plain as high, I'm blue as this cloudless sky, a shattered dream on a jet stream of thin air. I'm gonna climb on any road, Finlandia to worst Cuervo. Roll that card on back here till I don't care. It's gonna take a lot of little bottles to get me there. Back to the hotel in Santa Fe, and the empty crown makes me wonder how I ever let you get away. How many minis are gone, 'cause I've been tying one on from Tulsa to Chicago. And how much is too much? I'll let you know. Dream on a jet stream of thin air. Oh, I'm gonna climb on any road, Finlandia to worst Cuervo. Roll that card on back here till I don't care. It's gonna take a lot of little bottles to get me there. Oh, it's gonna take a lot to get me there. To get me there. Oh, it's gonna take a lot of little bottles to get me there. Oh, it's gonna take a lot of little bottles. Yes, it is.
Thanks to people.